If you ever wondered how to best use artifact items in set 17, this is going to be the video for you because we are going to cover which champions use each item the best and also go over every single new artifact that's in this set, and there are quite a few of them. Pretty much every single god brought an artifact item with them, so we're going to go over the new artifacts first, then we're going to go through every single item and recommend some champions for them. So let's start off with Ahri's Aura. This item gives 4 mana regeneration and 20 ability power, and then the holder is orbited by 3 Foxfires. Each one deals magic damage, and the orbit expands to hit the holder's target. This is a pretty weird item, but it's best utilized on carries with a lot of AoE and AP damage. The Foxfire's damage scales with the unit's AP, making Archangels a great complementary item to this, and then carries who have consistent but unfocused AoE damage are usually going to be the best holders of this item. For example, if you're playing something like Aurelion Soul, this item probably should be prioritized. Vhagar 3-star, Nami, and Karma are some other examples, but I think right now Aesol is my standout candidate here. Next we have Ekko's Patience. This one gives AP and AD, and your total ability damage is increased by 45%, but is dealt over 2 seconds instead. So this item is really good on units that have high burst or consistent damage, and ones that rely on their abilities a lot, obviously. So anything with caster in their name, probably going to be pretty good with this. So one example is going to be Aurora 3. She's going to be a pretty good item holder, but it can be a little bit situational to get to, as she's gated behind Anima reroll. Victor 3-star can also work pretty well, as most of his damage is already delayed, meaning that he doesn't have that much of a drawback from the item's passive. The most common and consistent holder is probably again going to be Aesol, as he gets a lot of value from his constant AoE damage. So as long as your unit has a lot of ability damage and ideally AoE, this item is going to perform pretty great. Just make sure you have anti-heal, as sometimes they might be able to heal up during the delay. Next we have Evelyn's Instinct, which gives attack speed, Omnivamp, AD, and AP. Whenever you switch targets, you blink to the next target, and your attacks and abilities also execute the holder's target if they are below 12% of their health. This item's base stats are insanely high, which makes it pretty much what every single melee carry wants. A lot of melee carries are referred to as stat sticks because they usually have 2 main weaknesses, a lack of range and also having to walk between their targets. Evelyn's Instinct removes one of these weaknesses completely by allowing you to blink between kills. Bel'Veth 3 is going to be a great holder of this item, as she has 2 range and also has a great single target damage to get kills, but pretty much any melee carry will do, but ideally the ones that are single target are best. If you're ever running a melee carry, take this and run with it. Next we have Saraka's Miracle, which gives damage reduction and HP. The first 2 times a holder drops below 50% health, a miracle occurs, healing them for 20% of their max health. This is absolutely bonkers busted on tanks, and it pretty much can be played on any single one of them, as it gives HP and damage reduction. The key to getting good value out of this item though is by playing it on high base HP units, or at least a unit with very high effective HP. Right now, one of the best users of this is going to be the Mighty Mech, because he's very tanky and he also counts as 2 units sometimes, so you could just concentrate a lot of the power onto him. When he gets the miracle effect, he's incredibly hard to take down. Next we have Thresh's Lantern, which gives armor and MR and HP, which is another tank item, and after 6 seconds of combat, pull the leftmost bench unit onto the battlefield. While that unit lives, 20% of all damage the holder would take is redirected to them. So this is really good in the late game because you could pull some crazy stuff off your bench if you have enough gold for it. However, do keep in mind that the stats it gives are not quite as good as some of the other tank artifact items, even though it still is better than like a regular tank item. But knowing this changes how we kind of use this item. It's best on like a secondary tank, so that way you could save all 3 item slots on your main tank for super tanky items. Normally, the best units to pull in with this are threat-like units that have high base stats or CC, such as Nunu or maybe even a random legendary, which gives damage amplification. Next, we have Varus's Obsession. On combat start, your strongest tank becomes the soulmate, and for each second they are alive, the holder gains 4% stacking AD and AP, and your soulmate heals for 20% of the damage the holder deals. So this is really good in comps where you only care about 2 units. This item pretty much gives you Gunblade and Archangels and like the attack damage version of Archangels all in one item slot, but unfortunately the one condition that you need to fill is that your main tank must stay alive the whole fight. So pretty much any super tank paired with some backline carry that can scale is going to be the best user of this. I know I've been using this as example a lot, but Asel and the Mighty Mech come to mind just because artifact items work really well in the mech trait, but a lot of other comps can make use of it too. It also pairs up pretty nicely if your main tank has something like a stone plate, as they're often taking most of the damage and just kind of filling that super tank type of role. But as another example, you could play a comp like Meeple Vhagar with a strong 3-item Rammus in the front line and get some pretty good value out of this item that way too. The last new artifact is going to be Yasuo's Blade Work. This one's going to give attack damage and attack speed, and every 4 seconds your next attack is a double attack. So this item is pretty slow and honestly doesn't have that many great item holders. Kindred is likely going to be your best bet here, but I'd say right now this item is a little bit understated, so unless they buff this a bunch, you probably want to avoid taking this item. But in case they do buff it and keep the same identity, any backline carry with a lot of attack damage is probably going to make really good use of this item, because that's how you get value out of the double attack. Or if your unit gets some sort of effect that benefits from attacking a lot, it's also going to be really good on them too. So those are the god items. I also want to talk a little bit about the anomaly, which is Ekko's boon. It's not really an artifact item, but it is something that's still pretty special. And essentially what this item does is it evolves your holder, granting it an effect based on their role. So if you're a tank, you gain 1100 health and grow in size. If you're a marksman, you get a lot of attack speed, and on cast, you knock back their target within 3 hexes of them. If you're a fighter or assassin, you gain AD and AP, and then you triple it when you're below 85% health. And then if you're a caster, for every 50 mana spent, throw a 2-hex fireball that deals % max health true damage, while also wounding and burning them for a couple of seconds. Lastly, if you're a specialist, you can gain 6 stars that orbit that champion, and each star deals a bunch of magic damage, and the orbit expands to hit the champion's current target. So if you're ever missing a tank item, this is like one of the best replacements for one of them. It's pretty much just like a Warmogs, but it's pretty much like an adaptive helm that does everything on whoever you place it on. So if you're ever low on items on one of your key units, this is going to be a great item to take, because you could always get best in slots for them later on and then move this anomaly onto someone else if you really need to. I think right now though, fighters get the most value out of the base stats from this item. This anomaly on something like an Akali 3, Bel'Veth 3, or Fiora 2 is incredibly powerful right now, and probably should be what gets prioritized. However, if you already ran out of items and you need stuff like anti-heal, obviously you can put it on a caster to get that effect, but you probably want a bit more value out of a special item like this instead of just filling that anti-heal type of requirement. Pretty much though, the main power from this is again because it's so adaptive. So even though other artifact items might give a little more power than this, the fact that literally any unit can use this is a huge benefit for Ekko's boon. But now let's go into all the other artifact items and cover exactly which champions can make great use of each of them. Also, all this info is going to last throughout the entirety of the set unless they fundamentally change how a champion works or how some of the artifact items work, which they pretty much barely do. So first up we have is Eegis Adon. Every couple seconds you steal armor from enemies within a hex, and you also heal some of the holders' armor. So this is going to be really good on units with a lot of resistances, and frankly that means Bastion's pretty good, and then also units with a lot of effective health when you have a lot of resistances means that stuff like Brawlers and Vanguards can also use them pretty well too. It kind of works in both ways, but pretty much any tank can use Eegis Adon. A lot of the tank artifacts, they aren't too discriminatory. There are literally tons of users that can use them, but I will say that Aegis Adon and Dusk is the same thing, but it gives magic resistance. These are typically best on the super tanks. So if you have the choice between like Nunu or Rammus, they're both 4-cost tanks. I'd personally prefer to drop it on Rammus because Rammus is tankier than Nunu. Nunu's great, he's fantastic, but he's more of a CC unit. So to kind of balance that out, he's going to be a little less tanky than Rammus, who has like a pure tanky ability. Next we have is Ahri's Aura. The holder is going to have a bunch of Foxfires around them, and each one deals a bit of magic damage. And then for every 20 mana the holder spends, the Foxfire travels 5% faster for the rest of combat. So this is going to be one of those stacking items. It's going to be great on users who use stuff like Archangels. It is an AP item after all. Mana items and things like that. You could do a combo with Ahri's Aura, such as like Jeweled Gauntlet plus Nashor's Tooth. That way you have some mana regeneration, but also some damage still. But obviously like Blue Buff, Spear of Shojin, Adaptive Helm are going to be paired up great with this item too. But it's also a great replacement for items such as like Rageblade or Archangel Staff because it's a stacking item on its own. Stacking as in it scales throughout the fight. So if your unit likes one of those items, or if you have a lot of tanks, you have the ability to kind of scale this up and make really good use of it. Some units I like for this are going to be Bard, Karma, Milio, Twisted Fate, and Gwen. There's honestly like so many more that I need to mention. I know some of these may seem weird. For example, Gwen is not very meta right now, but I promise you once Gwen rerolls a thing, she's gonna really like this item. Other units that can use this is stuff like Aurelion Soul. Pretty much anyone who can use a stacking AP item is gonna make fantastic use of this. So, I mean, so many units can use Archangel. I can't list out like 50 units here, but these are some units to try it on. It essentially replaces something like an Archangel staff. Next one up we have is Blighting Jewel. I find this item very annoying a lot of times because there's always very specific users that make the most of this, but pretty much anyone who has a lot of instances of magic damage is going to be best. So that's oftentimes either like a very fast auto attacker or an AoE champion. I think my favorite out of this list has got to be Teemo. He both attacks very quickly and he also has a damage over time, so he's by far like one of the best users of this item. A very interesting one I think is Riven. Riven just dances around a lot, does a lot of attacks when she's in her magic form, and it could make for an interesting AP build. Morgana is a natural user for this. She has like a thing that deals damage every second, so she's really nice for that, and then Bard, same thing there. So again, pretty much anyone with damage over times or really fast auto attacks, they're going to be making pretty good use of Blighting Jewel. I think another one that's interesting is Zoe. Zoe's got like a bouncing thing, which also applies the effect a lot of times. Next up we have is Kappa Juice. This one is always a fun item to play around with. Essentially, every takedown you get a hat, and when you die, or the unit dies, you lose 20% of them. Obviously, backliners are going to be the best with this. I find that the auto attackers do slightly better than the casters, but some units you can use are Kindred, Twisted Fate, Corki, Kaisa, and Teemo. It doesn't really replace any item, but if you were to build either a Deathblade, Rabadon's Death Cap, or any item like that that gives raw stats, this is going to be a replacement for one of those. Next up we have is Crown of Demacia. This is not an artifact item, but it is still one of those special items that I wanted to include here, and the same rules apply as Kappa Juice. You just want it on a backliner that's going to live, because you just really can't have them dying, because this item gives attack damage and ability power every 2 seconds, but when the holder dies, you just lose the fight instantly. You can also put it on a tank. Cho'Gath uses it pretty well if you get him stacked up super big, but pretty much anyone who can use Kappa Juice can use Crown of Demacia. I mean, think about it. If your carry likes AD or AP, which is most of them, I can't think of a single unit that doesn't like those stats as a backliner. They're going to be able to make use of Crown of Demacia. Next build up we have is Dawncore. This one favors people who like casting a lot. So if you're a caster and you need to reduce your mana pool, this is going to be pretty good. Some interesting ones to use it on, like obviously you could use it on all the range casters and stuff, but Riven uses this pretty decently as well. Riven I think uses a lot of different artifacts really nicely because she kind of fulfills every single role. She's like a tank damage dealer, but also AP and AD, so we're going to be seeing a lot of Riven here. One thing that's underrated with a lot of units is their flexibility, and when you take something like Living Forge, for example, where you just get a bunch of artifact item anvils, you don't really know what you're going to get, so sometimes it can be hard to play around it, and you might get trolled sometimes where you get nothing that's usable. But if you're playing a comp that has Riven in it, like you pretty much can always make use of some of the artifact items. But if you have low mana pool, Dawncore is going to be really good. So you just want to avoid it on things with like, I think the break point is around like 60 or 70 mana. If you're below that amount of mana, Dawncore is going to be pretty good. So I think like Lyssandra's got like 30 mana. She's not listed here, but she's going to make great use of this item as well. I do also want to mention Asol for some reason in the stats does really badly with Dawncore. He does have a pretty big mana pool, but maybe there's something else going on funky there with like the mech mechanic. I'm honestly not too sure, but just do not build it on him until further notice. Next up we have is Death's Defiance. This is just the perfect Bloodthirster or Hand of Justice replacement. A little bit better at replacing Bloodthirster though, but pretty much any melee carry can use this, like Briar, Master Yi, Fiora, any of the Marauders, honestly. Riven, Urgot, Blitzcrank. I'm pretty sure even like Shen can use this. If you build Hand of Justice, Bloodthirster, anything like that, this is just one of those really good replacements for it. I think this is best used on like reroll comps though. That's generally how artifact items go. On a reroll comp, they just have a bit more impact than in a fast 8 or fast 9. Next up we have is Ekko's Patience. There are a lot of users who can use this. It's pretty much just any caster. If you cast spells, if you're little roll thing on your champion says caster, like attack caster, magic caster, anything like that, they're going to be making pretty good use of Ekko's patience, because that's literally all this item does. It increases your ability damage, so if you rely on it, it's going to be good on that unit. The item you would replace is stuff like Giant Slayer or Guard Breaker, anything that gives damage amp, because those are usually like the luxury items that you put as a third item. That's kind of where Ekko's patience kind of sits. For example, let's say you are Lulu. You want like spell crit, you want a mana item, like a Shojin or blue buff. But then third item, it could kind of be anything. You could build maybe like a Rabadon's Death Cap, an Archangel Staff, Striker's Flail, Giant Slayer. Instead of that, you could just build Ekko's Patience. So I wouldn't really use this to like hard force any build in particular, because it's not game breaking on anyone, but it's kind of like one of those nice luxury items. Next up we have is Eternal Pact. This one's so weird to use. On combat start, form a pact with the highest health ally champion. If they die, gain mana regen and ability power. When the ally uses their ability, you gain mana, and every couple of seconds you can shield your ally for 200% of your ability power. I think there is an overlap in this. Pretty much any AP user can use this item, but I think it works best on people who naturally get high AP from like traits and things like that. But obviously any AP item holder will do. But for example, like I wouldn't want it on someone like, let's say Nami. Nami's pretty good with this item, but she's not like the perfect user of it, because she's a replicator, which means that she casts her spell twice, and while that's great because she makes great use of the ability power that Eternal Pact gives, the shielding that you get from it is worth a little bit less than someone who gets a lot of ability power from their trait. For example, something like Zoe, which can get it from Arbiter, might be able to use this a bit better than some of the other units. But honestly, any AP user can use this. It's not like any super OP win condition or anything like that. Contrast that with something like Evelynn's Instinct, where whenever you switch targets, you blink to the next target, and attacks and abilities execute the holders below 12% of their health, and kills grant the holder 50% attack speed, decaying over 3 seconds. Whenever you get this item, it's just insta melee carry. Doesn't really matter who. Some of the best ones are going to be Bel'Veth, Fiora, and Master Yi. Master Yi especially, because with the Psionic item, target lock optics, where the holder's first attack on an enemy deals bonus damage, you pretty much have like 2 effects that help you deal a bunch of damage to a new unit that you're hitting. But pretty much any melee carry can use this. Other uses that are not listed here could be something like Diana when she's meta, Talon can use this, pretty much any melee carry, AP or AD. But it is going to be slightly better on auto attackers, which is another reason why Master Yi is so good with this, because it greatly increases your attack speed whenever you get a reset. So that's the important thing to note there. Next up we have is Fishbones. This is another item that can allow you to just super hard force a comp. What this item does is that your attacks now randomly target units within your attack range, which sounds bad, but based on how much stats it gives you, it becomes really, really good. Some really good units for it, like I think Bel'Veth's probably going to be one of the best ones ever, but some range units can use it pretty decently because they can like snipe random units. So Jin's going to be nice with it. Corki's very solid. Urgot, he can just randomly snipe people and one-tap people sometimes. And then something like Fiora can use it too because she hits random enemies anyways. So the downside, honestly, isn't even that bad for her. Next up we have is going to be Flicker Blades. This is a great Rage Blade replacement. It's pretty much like the built-in Rage Blade replacement. This is another one of those items where, yeah, you can build your entire game plan around it. Teemo is going to be absolutely demonic with this. He just relies on auto-attacking a crap ton. Kindred's going to be pretty good with this. LeBlanc's going to be good with this. Vex, amazing with this. Pretty much if you build Rage Blade, Kraken Slayer, or anything like that on someone, they're going to be good with this. I'm trying to think of some others. There's so many, honestly. Like Master Yi can use this. Xayah can use this too. But if you build Rage Blade, just skip it, get the Flicker Blade instead, and then you pretty much don't need rods for the rest of the game because you could focus your energy on building literally any other item. I like pairing this a lot with something like a Hextech Gunblade if I'm building a backliner, because you get attack speed every auto attack, like very similar to how Rage Blade used to work, but you can also stack AD and AP with this item. That means that something like a Hextech Gunblade is a perfect complementary item with this, because Hextech Gunblade is a multiplicative item, and all the raw stats that you gain from Flicker Blade just get amplified through something like a Hextech Gunblade. It works out really, really well on those units, namely something like Vex. Next up we have is Gambler's Blade. Gambler's Blade works literally as a Guinsoo's Rage Blade replacement, but it also works really well with the Rage Blade because it allows you to farm a lot of gold. Pretty much every auto attack, you have a very, very small chance to generate a gold. So you want to just stack as much attack speed on a unit as early as possible. So building a Rage Blade with Gambler's Blade is really, really nice to do. One tip I have with Gambler's Blade is that if you ever have a Reforger, after maybe like stage 4 or 5, you want to just reforge your Gambler's Blade into a random artifact item, because this item is only good or useful in the early game to generate gold. Gold is much less useful in the late game. So that's why it's really good to reforge this. But pretty much anyone who could use Flicker Blades can use Gambler's Blade. Literally anyone can use this. Next up we have is Gold Collector. This is really good if you are an attack caster. So it's pretty much tailor-made for something like Corki. I think Corki is by far the best user of this item. He's an attack caster, and he doesn't need to build Infinity Edge because he's a Fate Weaver. So normally, the classic Gold Collector build is IE Gold Collector. If you get that in stage 2, you just like win streak and kill everything and get a lot of bonus gold. Because the way Gold Collector works is that it helps you execute units, and it also gives you attack damage and critical strike chance. And then executions have a chance to drop gold. So normally people would build something like IE Gold Collector, and then random third item. However, when you do that, you run out of item slots. You only have one extra item. That's where Corki comes in. He is a Fate Weaver, so he can have like a blue buff with the Gold Collector, and then he has the luxury of getting that third item to be literally whatever you want. So you just look at what stat you're missing based on like how your game's going, maybe what your augments are. If your augment gives you a lot of damage amp, maybe you don't need a Giant Slayer. You could build something else instead. If you have a lot of attack damage, you could build something like a Guard Breaker maybe. But that's pretty much why Corki is like one of the best users of Gold Collector in recent memory, because he really makes use of that extra item slot so that you could manually fix whatever stat you're missing on your primary carry. Other users of this is going to be like Kindred. Kindred uses this pretty nicely. Pretty much any AD champion's going to make this work. Jin's going to use it pretty well. Let me think. Kai'Sa, Xayah, Graves is another really good user of this. But pretty much anyone who builds Infinity Edge or could build Infinity Edge is going to be the like most perfect user of Gold Collector. But any attack damage carry can use this, because who doesn't like attack damage, and execution is always really, really nice. Hot tip, whenever you're playing Gold Collector early on, play a little more aggressively, like level up a bit earlier than you normally would. Be more aggressive with item slamming, because the gold generation you can get from this early game really can snowball your entire game. Next up we have is Hellfire Hatchet. Hellfire Hatchet attacks deal 3% of the holder's max health as bonus physical damage. For every 1% health missing, gain 1% attack speed. This is a bit of a weird item. It's really one of those like melee auto attacking items that's really nice. Stuff like Briar uses it really well. If you 3-star Briar, she's going to have a bunch of health, so she makes really good use of it. But any melee super auto attacker is going to use this really nicely. Master Yi is going to be pretty solid. Any of the Marauders really. But pretty much if you're a melee unit who likes auto attacking, which is a lot of them, Hellfire Hatchet is going to be for you. I wouldn't pay too much attention to the max health thing though, because you never want to put it on a tank. Like, tanks perform really, really badly with this item. But for some reason, when I was doing some data checking, I noticed that a lot of people put this on a tank, but that's really not how you're supposed to use this. You're just supposed to put it on a bunch of auto attackers. One of my favorite items is Horizon Focus. Horizon Focus just deals a bunch of magic damage whenever you CC a unit. So literally any unit with CC can use this, preferably someone with AoE. Horizon Focus is one of those items where you just pray you don't randomly get it late in the game, because some comps don't have a big CC unit, and in those cases, you're pretty much just down an item. I can't tell you how many times I've reforged my Gambler's Blade into a Horizon Focus, and I just never had a user for it. Throughout my whole TFT career, it's probably happened like, I don't know, maybe like 20 times or something like that. I promise you, whenever you don't want this item, you always get it. But in case you're in one of those rare situations where you can choose who gets it, anyone with CC makes it work. I think like Nunu's gonna be one of the best ones to use it on. Mountain Lulu's hilarious with this. Lulu gets like a little bonus effect based on the Stargazer constellation that you're on. Maokai's gonna use this pretty nicely. Rek'Sai. If you have a CC unit, this is the one for you. By the way, I just want to show you guys how nuts this item is on Lulu. You could type in Lulu over here and then go to artifacts on the filter on the right hand side, and it's just the best one by far on her. I know the sample size isn't the biggest, but I promise you it's because it only works on certain versions of her, and Mountain is going to be one of those times. But absolutely disgusting little combo there, and definitely YouTube clippable whenever you do get it. Next up we have is Hole Crusher. This one's just a generic stat item. It's pretty good on tanks, but it has the weird condition of you want your unit to be isolated and then they get like pretty much a Warmog's worth of health. Okay, not that much. I think it gives like 400 or 500 health, but it works really, 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 really nicely on units that use Gargoyle Stoneplate, because whenever you play Gargoyle Stoneplate, you're oftentimes isolating your main tank anyways, so Hole Crusher just complements that really, really easily. So it's kind of like a free combo there. So Leona, for example, in her reroll comp, she really likes Stoneplate. Jack, same thing. So you could put it on those two, but honestly, any tank can use it, like any generic tank. It doesn't have to be like any specific one, but I think Leona might be one of the best users because oftentimes people isolate her in the front line and also build Gargoyle Stoneplate with it. But many more users can use this than what's just listed here. Next one up we have is Lichbane. If you cast a lot, this is going to be good. Riven's going to be one of the best ones for this. Riven's got like a 20 mana pool, so with Lichbane comes great responsibility, but your first attack after you cast your spell is going to deal a bit of bonus damage. So pretty much anyone who casts quickly is going to work really nicely with this. Like Sona's another great example of that. Milio, Teemo, all these users cast a lot during the course of the game. So it just makes a lot of sense to add Lichbane to those units. It kind of works in the same way as Dawncore. Like if we go up to Dawncore, pretty much the same units are already there. Next build up we have is going to be Light Shield Crest. Light Shield Crest is always a little goofy to me. It's either really, really good or really, really bad. But every 3 seconds, shield the lowest percent health ally for 70% of the holder's combined armor and magic resist for 5 seconds. So as you can guess already, it's really good on people who use Gargoyle Stoneplate because you isolate them up front and then put the Light Shield Crest on them, and that combo works really, really, really well. The only weird interaction it has is when no one else is taking damage, in which case the shield that you get from this is kind of useless, but it's really good against any AoE comp, any assassin comp, because you just get infinite shielding on whoever's getting hurt, which is really, really nice, obviously. But pretty much anyone who uses Gargoyle Stoneplate is going to make fantastic use of Light Shield Crest. But if you get this randomly, just put it on any tank, you will not regret it. Next up we have is Luden's Tempest. I won't lie to you, I'm not the biggest fan of Luden's in this set. I don't think there's anyone who really does that much damage to make great use of this. So Luden's is really good if you're just like one-shotting or like super overkilling units. And honestly, not a lot of units do that right now. I think right now, the best unit to use this is going to be Twist of Fate. He has an overkill effect himself already, and that stacks up really, really nicely. I don't know if anyone remembers Ahri from like, I think it was 2 or 3 sets ago. She also had an overkill effect, and whenever you stack these together, it's just literally even more overkill. I think it was so OP with Ahri that they had to disable the item because of her. So pretty much anyone with an overkill effect built into their kit is going to make great use of Luden's Tempest, or anyone with super, super, super high single target damage, so much that the damage is wasted. But honestly, those units don't really exist in this set. But pretty much Fate Weavers use this the best because they often have the highest burst damage available. Next up we have is Mittens. Mittens I would say is buildable around. Like you could probably hard force a build with this because it's just one of the best melee items out there. So it really just depends if you're in 1, a reroll meta, and 2, a melee reroll meta. So whenever Bel'Veth is really good, get Mittens and you can just hard force something like Bel'Veth. Obviously Fiora is going to be a monster with this. Talon's really good with this. Pretty much any melee carry gonna make great use of Mittens. I prefer reroll, obviously, because artifact items are just better on reroll comps because you want to concentrate power in reroll comps. In terms of like regular units, Master Yi uses this pretty decently, and honestly, some hero augments can use this too. Next one up we have is Prowler's Claw. Absolutely hard forceable with Urgot. I go over that in my tier list in the meta snapshot on bunnymuffins.lol. If we go down to Urgot, which is one of the best comps right now, I say that artifacts make this comp S tier, and the main culprit of that is gonna be the Prowler's Claw. What this item does is it just makes you jump after killing a unit, and you also shed negative effects, and then your next attacks deal critical bonus damage. And guess what Urgot does? He loves critting. We build double crit on him every single time. So he's pretty much just gonna one tap and keep one tapping everyone with the Prowler's Claw. It's just an absolutely bonkers broken combo. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it. Apart from that, like any melee carry can use this. You don't really have to care too much about who. However, if I did get this in stage 2-1, I would just hard force Urgot every single time because yeah, it really is that good on him. Next up we have is Rapid Fire Cannon. Anything that gives plus range is always very interesting because these type of items always break the game somehow, and I think one prime example of that is going to be Bel'Veth, but any short range unit that likes Quicksilver is going to love Rapid Fire Cannon. Reason why is because Rapid Fire Cannon just gives you a lot of uptime, and that's exactly what Quicksilver does too, but Rapid Fire Cannon lets you do it from an even safer spot. I think the best units that use this are going to be 2 range champions because it gives you a mix of having enough range to stack the rapid fire cannon safely while also being able to make use of the range. For example, you don't want to put rapid fire cannon on like a Xayah because she already has 4 range. You don't really need much more than that. Like, does it still do stuff on her? Is it better than having like some random generic item? Probably, but it's not going to be that great because she just doesn't make much use of the range. Another mistake I see with rapid fire cannon is that people still build Quicksilver or an Edge of Night with the rapid fire cannon. I think that's overkill. If you have a rapid fire cannon, you want to focus purely on damage. So if you're a AD auto attacker, maybe you want a Giant Slayer so you don't get stuck on a tank. I think Giant Slayer is a great item to pair with rapid fire cannon. But you could also build other things such as like a Deathblade just to get more raw stats on your auto attacks. But yeah, definitely broken on Bel'Veth. Also usable on some of the other melees. I think Shen is a very interesting one too. He is an auto attacker. A lot of people don't know that. They think like, oh, he's a tank, he's a Bastion. He's not, he's a magic fighter. And rapid fire cannon is one way to kind of activate him. But yeah, I think like the best user by far is Bel'Veth, maybe the only like true user of the set. Obviously you could use it on a bunch of different people too. Seeker's Armguard is always a weird item to play with because it's a stacking melee item, which is kind of a contradiction. When you're melee, you don't live that long, so you do not want a stacking item. So I always find this item kind of OP or underpowered, depending on the patch. I think Riven's going to be the most common user of this. Again, she works with either AD or AP, so this is a great item to kind of put on her. It's like a great replacement for Titan's Resolve. But ideally, she gets a bunch of takedowns and then gets more AP, armor, and magic resistance, and then it just turns her into an absolute monster. Other people that can use this is pretty much just any AP melee user, so like Blitzcrank and Shen, very good options for that. But honestly, also something like Gwen. Gwen has enough survivability with her 2 range that she's able to stack this safely without dying too early with it. But again, like we're not in a Gwen meta right now, but I promise you when we are, this is going to be a pretty solid item on her. Next up we have is going to be Silvermere Dawn. This is really good on people who honestly don't do anything. I know that sounds very funny, but like Leona doesn't actually do anything, right? So you just drop it on her and then you get like a CC bot and it just turns her incredibly useful. Honestly, a lot of different tanks can use this, like Tahm Kench, Jax, Rek'Sai, all pretty good users of this. You could use like Ross or the Mighty Mech. Like Ross, he literally does nothing, right? So he's a great user of this. Pretty much if the unit does nothing or is a tank that you don't really care about, they're going to be making pretty good use of this item. This item used to be different, so a lot of people from the past, if you're coming in from like a previous set and you haven't played recently, they did change this. So that's why it's not really good on melee carries, which is what it was used on in the past. Next one up we have is Sniper's Focus. Again, if you are coming back from a few sets ago, they did change Sniper's Focus. It no longer gives bonus range. Now it just pretty much turns your unit into a sniper without officially having that trait. So if someone is 4 or more hexes away, Sniper's Focus is going to give you 40% damage amp. So who can use this? Obviously, snipers can use this. I don't think snipers are like the absolute best users of this though, because snipers already get damage amplification. So it's a little wasted on them in my opinion. That's why like Xayah isn't up here. Jin's only here because he literally makes really good use of it because he attacks almost everything on the map. But anything with super long range, random targeting, or massive area of effect damage is going to work really nicely with Sniper's Focus because the goal of this item is to hit people far away from you, and you can only do that if you have those like random targeting effects. But some units I like for this is going to be Kai'Sa, Corki, Kindred, and then Jin as we talked about before. But again, try not to put it on snipers unless it's a very specific one. Next one up we have is Saraka's Miracle. This one's a very fun one. This is probably one of the better tank artifact items that I've seen, and it also has a lot of built-in utility. So what this does is when you drop below 50% health, a miracle happens and you get healed for 20% of your max health. And if the holder survives player combat, you gain 1 player health for each miracle this combat, and it could happen twice. So if you're winning a lot or making like some great comebacks, Saraka's Miracle is going to be absolutely bonkers busted. If you were playing like some cash out comp with Anma, if you happen to get a Saraka's Miracle, it's going to be really, really nice to just heal all the way back up with this. Well, not all the way, but at least some of it. But keep in mind, whenever you are playing with this, it's pretty much winner take all. If you lose, you just have a worse item. If you win, you get some player life back. So when you do have this item, you do want to snowball with it. That means rolling down earlier than you would, stabilizing harder than you would, just to make sure you get max value from this item. But any tank can use this, you don't really care which. But any of the super tanks are going to be nice. So like I don't like putting this on Nunu for reasons we stated before. Stuff like a Tahm Kench might be a better candidate. Next up we have is Statikk Shiv. This one is a hand-picked artifact item for all the Rageblade AP users out there. There are just 3 of them right now. It's going to be Teemo, Vex, and LeBlanc. Pretty much no one else uses this that well. But if you do get this item, it's just a simple hard force and that's it. Obviously it's difficult to hard force Vex, so you just play LeBlanc and then eventually go into Vex later. So hard force LeBlanc, or you could hard force something like Teemo reroll. So you're just gonna have to recognize that early if you get static shiv on stage 2-1. See how many Teemos you have. If you have less than 2, don't go for it. Just go for LeBlanc, and obviously you could use Teemo as an item holder to get there, but I would not reroll Teemo unless you have a bunch of copies of him, because that's just how reroll works. You don't want to reroll something that you don't have. Next item up we have is Talisman of Ascension. This one's a little tricky to use. You want to use it on someone that lives for a really long time. Typically, in TFT history, it's been either like a super tank or just someone in the backline that plays with a lot of frontliners. So if you're running like 6 Bruiser or something like that, and you have some random dude in the back, like, yeah, you could Talisman them. That's where Kindred kind of fits in. Kindred can jump away from units, so she just has natural survivability compared to other range units. But pretty much anyone who can make a big last stand is able to use Talisman of Ascension. But honestly, I wouldn't recommend playing around with this item. I think it's very below average in the state it's in right now. But ideally, some backliner that can live is going to be the way to go. Sometimes there are sets where like there's some super tank that can use this really well, but I don't think that's the case in this set. Next build up we have is the Indomitable. This one's just a generic tank item. It's not really special on anyone. I guess it's a little bit better on the CC units that I talked about before that I've been hating on. So I honestly think this is good on something like Nunu, compared to something like Rammus at least. The reason why is because you get stun immunity when you get this, and when you have stun immunity, you are guaranteed to get your cast off as soon as possible. So let's think about it for a moment. Which units have the most high impact spells as a tank? It's going to be the CC unit. So that's why I like Nunu a lot with this, but honestly, it is just a generic tank item, so literally any tank can use this, and you don't really think too hard about this. Like, whatever your comp is, like, just go to bunnymuffins.lol/meta. Like, let me click on a random comp. I'm going to close my eyes here. I'm going to click on this one, and we are in Twisted Fate reroll. Your main tank is Jax. The item goes on Jax. Go to the next one. Your main tank is Leona. The item goes on Leona. Like, you're not going to put it on someone else because the stats say it's better, right? Like, for all these tank items, you're just putting it on whoever your main tank is. You're not thinking too much about it. But if I were to like perfectly handpick this, I would say like Nunu probably one of the better users of it for the reasons I stated before. Next up we have is Thresh's Lantern. Same exact thing there, just generic tank item. This one is interesting because you get to pull the leftmost unit on your bench into the battlefield. And while that unit lives, 20% of all damage the holder would take is redirected to them. So this is one of the rare exceptions where I think off tanks use this really well. That's why I like Morgana with this. Morgana is going to change. She's apparently going to become a 4 cost in the next patch, but right now she's pretty good with this. But whoever your off tank is can use Thresh's Lantern pretty well, but you could also put it on your main tank. It gives a lot of stats still, so it's still pretty nice for that. Next up we have is Titanic Hydra. So this item deals 4% of your max health plus 6% of your attack damage as bonus physical damage to the target and adjacent enemies. So it's really good on any auto attacker. By any, I mean any. It could be range, it could be melee, literally anything in between. Well, there's nothing in between actually. Those are the only 2 choices you got. Master Yi and Xayah are the most commonly seen users in my opinion. Master Yi being the melee version, Xayah being the range version, and then for a reroll option you got something like Briar. After that, Fiora and Riven can use this, stuff like Graves can use it also, but pretty much anything that auto attacks a lot, like if you're building either Rageblade on them or if they're a melee unit, they can use Titanic Hydra. Would I hard force a team comp based off of this? I'd say for like Xayah and Master Yi and Briar, yeah. For anything else, probably not. Actually, Bel'Veth can use this really well too. Okay, after that one, probably you don't want to hard force it, but like any of those 4, I'd say you can go for it. But after that, this is just like one of those supplementary items that you kind of get randomly. Next item up we have is Varus's Obsession. This one's weird. It gives you damage amp, and at the start of the combat, your strongest tank becomes your soulmate, and for each second they are alive, the holder gains stacking attack damage and ability power, and the soulmate also heals for 20% of the damage the holder deals. So this is pretty much a built-in Archangel Staff, Kraken Slayer, and Hextech Gunblade all in one item, so it is super useful. It's really good if you have like a Giga tank that you want to keep alive, and if you have another unit that loves stacking. So for example, like Teemo's going to be really good with it because he likes Rageblade. Something like a Kindred's going to be really good because she likes Rageblade. But it could also be really useful on teams that use really good tanks. So if you run Rammus, I think he's one of the best 4-cost tanks right now. It's going to be really solid, so that's why something like Corki can complement it pretty well too, because they're both meeple units. Rammus is a meeple, Corki's a meeple. But pretty much that's how this item works. It's like 3 items all in one. Obviously, it doesn't give as many stats as those 3 items, but it's the effect that you really care about there. So whenever you are building this, always tailor your build towards it. But honestly, this thing gives everything. It gives damage amp, it gives flat stats, and it also gives healing. Absolutely insane item. Next item up we have is Void Gauntlet. Pretty tricky item to use. It's pretty much a self-destruct item. So it's very unintuitive, but pretty much any tank can use it. But I don't think any of the super tanks really like this that much. It honestly really depends on how the fight is playing out, because you do want to live long in order to get the explosion off, but you don't want to live too long where your whole team dies before it matters and then you're the only one left, and then when you die your explosion doesn't matter because the fight's over. So play this in a comp that has a range carry. Whenever you're playing a melee carry, there always is a chance that they get sniped by something. You also want to make sure that you have some form of survivability on your range carry. So for example, if you're running Corki carry, this item's going to work out pretty nicely because Corki has like self-strafing. Kindred's another good example. Kindred has some self-protection also. She hops away a little bit. So pretty much you just need to play a comp where your primary carry isn't susceptible to getting one tap by random fight RNG, and then this item's going to be pretty decent. Next one up we have is going to be Wit's End. Wit's End is an auto-attacking item that also heals you, and it's also AP based. So a lot of different requirements there. The best unit for this, like the tailor-made unit for this, would be a melee unit that loves auto-attacking that's also AP. There aren't very many of those, are there? Ironically enough, I think Shen fits the build perfectly, and also something like Diana. Both these units are big auto-attackers, and they can make use of the healing because they're melee units, and they also deal magic damage. So that's kind of why I like these 3 up there. Apart from that, Riven can use this. Riven can use, honestly, all the artifact items, and also Gwen fits the build too. Teemo's a special case. I think there are some units that are just so good at auto-attacking that they can get away with using Wit's End. Like another example is going to be like LeBlanc or Vex. Like they definitely are users of this, but they are by no means ideal. That's not the right term for it. They are able to use the item, but they're not like the perfect user. Next build up we have is going to be Yasuo's Blade Work. This one's so good on Urgot. Oh my god. If Prowler's Claw didn't exist, I would think that this would be the best artifact item, but unfortunately it does. But there's also the unfortunate effect that not many users use Yasuo's Blade Work really well. It's a bit of a counterintuitive item. So every 3 seconds, your next attack is a double attack, which might make you think that this is really good on like on-hit champions. And that's not the case at all, because on-hit champions love building attack speed, and this item does not work well with attack speed, which is why it's really good on Urgot and Caitlyn, because they deal a lot of damage with their autos. Urgot because he has very slow attack speed, so he has to deal a lot of damage with his auto attacks just to balance him out. And then Caitlyn has the lucky effect, where she has a 15% chance to do like a headshot with her autos, so that's why Yasuo's Blade Work works really well with these two. Apart from that, I don't really think this is that great on anyone else. Like, yeah, it's usable on any random AD carry, but it's by no means like something that I would write home about. Last but not least, we have Zhonya's Paradox. This one is very similar to Wit's End. It's essentially, instead of like a Bloodthirster replacement, it is going to be an Edge of Night replacement, but for AP units. But honestly, the stats on this are so good that you could use it on either a frontliner or backliner. Like, I'd say if you were to handpick this, it'd be on something like Blitzcrank. I think Blitzcrank is handpicked for this for sure. But anything that needs to live a long time, so something like with a Rage Blade in the backline like Teemo, can work out pretty decently with this, because you always have random backliners that get hit by random stuff. So that's why you can pretty much use this on any backline AP carry, but obviously you're going to prefer it on someone in the front line. But yeah, Morgana uses this pretty well. Pretty much any AP legendary is going to use this well. Stuff like Diana, Gwen, things like that are all going to use Zhonya's Paradox pretty well. So lots of options there. I think Blitzcrank is the coolest one to use though, but that's kind of how this is going to work. By the way, the full guide can be found on bunnymuffins.lol/artifact items, or you could just click this little artifact button at the top here. And again, just to reiterate, this is by no means a comprehensive list because there are so many different units in the game. There are like 66 units every single set, or like 63 units every single set. I forget the exact number. And you can't fit all of them in a nice looking thing. What I will show you is the website teamfight.lol, where you can go to stats, items, and then look specifically for artifact items and see the various stats on them on that specific patch, how often they're played, common champions and performance champions, and also item combos that they could be used pretty effectively with. So we could click on like Yasuo's Blade Work. No surprise, we're going to see Urgot near the top. This item right now is averaging a 4.64, so it's not that great, but Urgot holding the stats up at 4.49, not bad, but you can kind of look around for these interactions. I do go over in my TFT opener guide how in the section where I cover augments, I talk about Portable Forge, and I say data check and hard force any interaction that averages 4.0 or better. One way to do that would be to go to the Explorer tool, type in stuff that you care about. Maybe you want to check out Urgot, for example, and you'll see if you have the artifact filter up, like Prowler's Claw, pretty solid there. 4.06, not bad. And you could probably hard force it, you know, like obviously I said 4.0 or better, but Urgot relies more on getting 3-star rather than the item, but Prowler's Claw automatically bumps us up to the S tier for sure, but it's going to be pretty hard to 3-star your Urgot no matter what artifact item you have. But that's kind of how I like to approach artifacts. They are ways to get like tons of direction, but a lot of the tank items, they're not really that helpful in terms of direction. Like there's still good items, like Hull Crusher is going to be good no matter what, but it's not going to be like a wow, okay, I have my entire game plan laid out. Compare that to something like a Flicker Blade where it really can decide your whole game. You can be like, okay, I got Flicker Blade, I'm gonna hard force LeBlanc, nothing's gonna stop me, and probably nothing will. So whenever you do pick an artifact item, you have to recognize which one is which and how it's gonna affect your game plan, and also know a bunch of different item holders for them. So that's something that's just gonna come with practice over time and knowledge over time. So as the set goes on, I'm assuming you will become better and better at it the more you learn about the game. But that's going to be it for me today. Hopefully this taught you a little something about artifact items. But if it didn't, let me know down in the comments below. Let me know your favorite users of various items, and that's about it. By the way, the Mountain Lulu Horizon Focus, holy cow, like you got to try it one time. But that's going to be it for me today. Hopefully you all enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all next time.